a quick summary of yesterday's class is we spoke again about the Ramak and the Pardes, his opinion that the Tzachos, what are the Tzachos first of all? Does anyone remember?
10 spheres.
The Astrospheres Hagenuzos. The 10 hidden spheres. There's a particular place where the 10 spheres reside that are called the 10 hidden spheres. Where is that place? Huh? In the Tzimtzum, before the Tzimtzum, right? Before the Tzimtzum. In the Or Ein Sof, there's also 10 spheres. And those are called the Tzachos. What's the opinion of the Ramak in Pardes? How are they formed?
They were
like light
different light inside is the thing. Like different rainbow
water
colors.
going into a colored
According
glass.
to the Ramak,
The light was all the same, it was just different vessels.
Right.
Like that function box.
Right. According to the Ramak, the vessels is what forms any differentiation in the light. Light does not have differentiation in itself. Right? So therefore, what vessels are in the Or Ein Sof? There's not really any vessels in the Or Ein Sof, but there's like the shoresh of vessels, the Rishima, and all the letters before the Tzimtzum, and they become pronounced for the first time. They were there in a potential way. So that potential letters of the Rishimo, they created the division in the light. That's the Ramak. But the Rabbi Rashab does not agree with this opinion, or he sees it slightly differently. That in the light itself, and this is really the whole premise of everything we've been saying for the last couple of weeks, in the light itself, there's already a division of light, and it's a special, unique type of light which is different than the rest of the Or Ein Sof. It's called the Chitzonis of the Or Ein Sof. And it's also in our parlance, it's called darkness, right? This is the light that's called darkness. It was always there, which means the subdivided light was not divided by vessels alone. It was already sitting there as colors of light, or as aspects of light. Yeah? And that's what he says, that even in the realm of the top, and he sort of brings the Ramak himself, when he says, the Ramak himself says that in the Tzachos, there's also Atmos and Kelim. Atmos and Kelim is like light and vessel. So even in that place, there's already something called light and vessel. Which means that the light which fit into those vessels, which means they're already differentiated light in some capacity that are sitting in those vessels, those theoretical vessels. Okay, so that's essentially the point that we're making, is that this is where he's driving. This is where originally we had said that there's light and darkness before the Tzimtzum, and this is the ultimate source of it, that there's something called a light which is intended to shine for the worlds, even before there's a Tzimtzum and a separation of these two lights, the light which is infinite and the light which is to shine for the worlds. Okay, so let's just finish up this paragraph here. Last 3 lines, page Samech Hey. So he says like this: Nimtza shegam lifnei hatzimtzum. It comes out that even before the tzimtzum, yesh bechinas ha'or shelahayer ba'olamos. There is a light which is intended to design to shine to the world. V'hu bechinas chitzonius ha'or. What is it? It's called the external aspect of the Or Ein Sof. It's called the makar of mamali kolomi. So throwing out a few names for it now, right? It's going to be the ultimate source of what's called the light which fills the world, because the light which fills the world is going to be measured light that goes inside of vessels. This is the source of the source of the source of that. Rak shekodem hatzimtzum, but here's the point: before the tzimtzum, hayakol ma'orav miyuchad. Before the tzimtzum, we got to find a chair for you, Chaim.
I got it.
You got it. Before the tzimtzum, it was all mixed in. So here's where it gets fishy a little bit. That it was there and it wasn't there. Because what do you have when you have a bunch of individual lights which are simultaneously inside of a big white light? They're not really there, right? They don't have any presence, they don't have any existence, they're just a theoretical. And that's why they need to be separated. So they were there, there's something called darkness in there, which needs to be separated from the light. It's not the same as the external part of the Or Ein Sof. But before the Tzimtzum, the external part and the internal part of the Or Ein Sof are all mixed together, and therefore there's a requirement for separation of the darkness from the light. V'lo nikar hachitzonius b'fnei atzmo. It was not recognizable in any way, the chitzonius, which we're also been calling the alos haratzon. It went up in Hashem's will to create the worlds that particular, right, that's called the chitzonius of the light. Before it went up in Hashem's will to make the worlds, He was still there. The Or Ein Sof was still there. And then suddenly, within the midst of this Or Ein Sof, a little area within the Or Ein Sof gets delineated. That's where it arose in his mind, the 10 spheres hagenuzos. So at the beginning point, it's not differentiatable, the chitzonius from the penimius. In other words, you have infinite spheros, which is the Or Ein Sof, the penimius, and then you have 10. So what is 10 amongst infinite if it's not separated out and siphoned out and differentiated? It's nothing. It's basically not there. So that's why there was a need for a tzimtzum. So turning the page, we're getting there. We're getting out of this mimer one way or another. You want pictures, huh?
Yeah, I want pictures of the mimer.
All right, maybe we'll pull out the board at a certain point. But so far, everyone understands what we just said? How you doing in there?
But it's still, sorry, before the...
No? Because if you have
good.
questions, now's the time to ask. We can draw pictures, we can make all kinds of charts.
Before the Tzimtzum, the black light, it's called black light or it's all light?
It's called black light.
Even before the Tzimtzum?
Yeah, it's called darkness. Because that's what it says, that V'yabdil bein ha'or u'bein ha'choshech, right? So he's separated between the light and the darkness. It means there's already darkness and light, that he separated them. Because it's essentially a different type of light.
But the darkness is hidden within the light.
Right, darkness is invisible because, yeah.
Rabbi,
If light is shining, you don't see the darkness. Like right now, for example, there's also darkness underneath the light, you could say, right? It's just the light is overpowering it, make it so you don't see the darkness. It's like we said, it's like a candle in the afternoon is actually the analogy that we gave. You have a candle in the afternoon, it's shining light, but you don't see the light because it's overpowered by the sunlight.
it's not that these 10 are darkness and the rest is light, because everything was spheres. You just took 10 specific ones. It's the ocean. Everything is drops. If you take any 10 drops, then it would be called darkness with regards to everything else.
Not really, because
So why is it adopted these
because
things
when
are called
you
darkness?
delineate, when you have infinite spheros, then there's no such concept yet as a finite chunk of them.
But technically, within infinite, there are groups of 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Or
Not
whatever.
really. That's not necessarily true. In other words,
So how is
it's
why
infinite.
was ours darkness?
What's that?
Why were our 10 the dark?
Because he chose them and he delineated them and he separated them from the group of infinity, and he drew a circle around them and said, "Here's this."
So it's only darkness after he did that.
Yeah, because
So
then it becomes
know?
limited. Before that, it's an aspect of unlimitedness.
So there was no darkness and light mixed before.
No, but the idea is that it was not. It was something. Okay, before. In other words, yeah, before he made the darkness, I suppose. It's hard to say that there was darkness, but
Before he
we don't
separated
have
it?
it. We don't have not before he separated it, but we don't have a. In other words, theoretically, if there was infinite light, right, then it seems like he would have to at some point delineate this 10 in order to make the source of darkness in there. However, it's not really what happened. Why? Because it was always there. The finite power of this darkness is as eternal as the infinite. Why? Because there's theoretical letters underlying it all. Don't forget, right? These invisible letters, they were always there. They're part of even when the Tzimtzum happened, they never left. They're as nitzchi more than the light. So the idea is that when these letters were there was aspects of the light that sort of neatly fit into those letters, kiviyachol, and there was aspects that did not. So there was always a differentiation between light that fit into the letters and light that didn't fit into the letters. So the light that fit into the letters, this was
Which letters? There are 10 specific spheres?
in the
Rishima.
the letters of the Rishima. Are they? Yeah, those are ultimately the letters of the 10 spheres.
So there are unlimited letters, just Dafka are 10 of the ones called darkness. Why aren't the other ones called darkness? Just because God chose these 10, there's still another 10 other 10.
I'm not sure if it's like that. I don't think there's other letters.
nothing else there.
There's other letters.
Rabbi, you said that
Huh?
Hashem could have pulled
There's
different
unlimited
spheres.
spheres.
Unlimited spheres, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily
Why
have
they all not
letters
called
assigned
darkness?
to them. They don't necessarily have letters assigned to them.
If you're a sphere, it means that I don't know what it means. Maybe it's
we
not
don't-
Netzach, maybe it's...
Right, but exactly. We don't have any idea what it means
At
because
the
it's
time
outside of the realm of being contained in any way. It's
at the-
infinite light, basically.
At the time of the Rishima, there's unlimited spheres.
What do you think the time of the Rishima? What do you mean by
I'm
that?
talking, I don't know how you want to call it, but when the Rishima, when Hashem...
Wait, I'd like to go one question at a time though, because we're getting.
I'm asking on his question because I don't...
Okay.
It just seems to me... I mean, there was nothing, right? And then Hashem had the Rishima letters within, And
I
then
don't know what you're saying exactly. What do you mean there was nothing? There was the letters of the Rishim are always there.
there was unlimited spheros over there.
Always.
There's two sides of the story. There's and this is where it also gets a little confusing. We have in light itself, and that's exactly what the machlokes with the Ramak is all about. The Ramak did not see it like this, but the way we see it is that in light itself, you have sort of a power of infinite and a power of limited. Because you have infinite light and you have limited light. That's in light. Mm-hmm. Then you have the other side of the equation, where you have the power of finite. That Hashem is the power of, which is not an aspect of light. It's the opposite of light. It's letters or tzimtzum or darkness, right? So according to the Ramak, the only way you get finite out of light is by interacting it with the darkness, right? But according to what we're saying, that's also somewhat true. But the idea is that you don't need to have the darkness sort of, the darkness being the letters of the Rishimo, they don't have to surface in order to create the limitedness of the light. They're underlying the situation, they're always there. It's just that they're invisible. So whatever light is shaykh to being in them, even when they're invisible, that's already a limited light which fits into kelim. There's other light which is not fit into those vessels. It's not shaykh to being, like we talked about the story of the ocean yesterday, right? You have like this stencil underwater. Remember that conversation? I'm going to draw it. I'm not drawing it.
You on the board?
Let's see if we can get some drawings going here for your own sake. This is not going to work. Where's that? This chair. I'll switch with you. Here, take the blue one.
I can work on the drawings every day for like an hour with
That would be useful. I think
Do we
need to
have
go.
a marker and stuff? I have a marker. I'm going to just clean the board up a little bit here.
Yeah.
Oh, we can probably work with
I want to
this.
make a book.
So essentially what we're saying is like, it's a little bit maybe hard to draw, but you have inside of the Orein Sof, let's call this the Orein Sof, okay, which basically goes on forever. It's not a circle. It does not have boundaries, it doesn't have edges, right? And it's just an infinite, like we said in previous classes, Hashem, the analogy in the Zohar is that you light a flame in a dark room, and the light goes to every possible corner. So there's infinite rays. And when you say, where is all this infinite rays coming from? And you trace it back to the candle, there's only one singular candle. Because something which is truly singular, if you try to describe it, you describe it infinitely. Right? Something which is pashut and has no edges, has no way of describing it, then when you try to describe it, the description goes on forever. Yes? You understand that?
Say that one more time, please.
When you have something which is or pashut, something which is implicitly limited, when you try to explain it, you'll run out eventually of descriptions because it has an end to it. Something which is implicitly undescribable, when you try to describe it, your description will go on forever because you can never get to the end of it. So this is this light going in every direction. It's like Orein Sof. It's infinite. We can't even imagine what infinite is really in our minds because we don't have a framework for that. But inside of that infinite light, not inside of it exactly, but we could say inside, there's all these little letters, right? There's an aleph, there's a base, there's a gimel, there's a dalet, right? There's just letters everywhere, okay? And the idea is that these letters are unseen because they're not of the same material that the light is made out of. They come from a completely different power of Hashem, His ability to be limited. So Hashem has the power to be Orein Sof, to be Bli Gavul, to express Himself in a way where He's allowing His essence to shine infinitely, or He has another power which is to withhold all that expression and just be Himself, essentially, and not shine. And that's called the power of limitation, or power of Gavul. That expresses itself as the absence of light, okay? And what is the absence of light? Is really letters, because they are finite in form. They have an actual description, not an infinite expression.
Did he create the letters before he created the Orein Sof?
The word created on either of them is a little bit sketchy, right? Because they're not like really creations. It's like they're Him, right? The light is a revelation of Him. The letters are also a revelation of Him. It's just that the letters, if you say the letters are a revelation of Him, creation is something other than God, right? A nivra, the world of Bria, it's a world that feels itself to have an experience with Hashem, and it's like a separateness. This level that we're talking about right now, they're not creations. At best, you can call them atzilus. There's an emanation of God Himself. It's just His expression of Himself.
So the expression of the letters manifest themselves before the expression of the Or Ein Sof?
Well, manifest themselves, it's hard to say. Like inside of Him, they're both there, right? Simultaneously and eternally. In other words, there's not before and there's not an after. They're just two powers that He has eternally. That's like Himself. It makes up Himself, so to speak. And they're not really two at that level. They're just one ability to do either thing.
Right.
It's not right. Since He hasn't expressed the ability. There's no plurality at all. It's not like He has this power and that power. He has one power, one ability to either do this or do that.
Right.
Now that being said, when He actually the first set that we're shown, the first sort of stage setup that we're talked about is the light is already shining. It does not start with the light hidden. It starts with the light shining. That's like just whatever it means it starts. Like His first act was to remove the light, not to bring the light out. Right? Now the point I'm trying to make here is that these letters, if they were really letters, mamish, like with divisions and so forth, separations, that would not be good, because that would basically put plurality inside of Hashem, right? And Hashem is one. If there's a whole bunch of letters sitting inside of God, that means He's divisible.
Maybe it's unlimited letters.
Even if it's unlimited letters, the fact that you can divide them up, right?
You can't really, I mean...
So this is outside of God.
I'm saying if you divide them up, it's a problem.
You can't divide up infinity. In any division of infinity.
No, you can. That will always be infinity.
I'm saying, but even if you have...
unless you go into limits, but yeah.
But even so, if you have infinite letters, and it's made up of letters, so each letter is finite. You just have a lot of them, or infinite number of them. But each one is finite. Fine, drops in the ocean are also measurable, right? But I'm saying, that's my point. As long as there are drops in the ocean, and the ocean is overwhelming them all, and they don't present themselves as a finite entity, then it's not a problem for God. It's not a problem to blemish Hashem's singularity. Because what we ultimately say is Hashem is many and one at the same time. If you say Hashem is many, it's a big no-no. So we say He's many and one at the same time, meaning to say that His ability to be many does not negate His simultaneously being one. And how does that work? Because the many that He is, it hasn't expressed itself yet as a thing. So it's just a theoretical ability to express Himself as finite, limited entities, as letters. But since it hasn't actually sprung out yet, it doesn't affect or put Him into a situation where He's divided up. Does that make sense? So that's what these letters are, to be clear. Right? They're not actual letters, they're just Hashem's ability to make letters. And what is this analogy for? The letters of the Luchos. It's a perfect analogy. That's why they're in there. It means you understand the letters of the Luchos, means there was no letter there. So you can have all the letters you want, as long as there's no existence to them, they don't create a plurality within the Yebishter. Right? Now all these letters are letters of the Luchos. Right? All these letters that I'm drawing here are like letters of the Luchos. They're not real letters. In other words, they're empty of form entirely. So therefore, the light... What's happening with you?
I'm sorry. I was going to ask
Making
about...
giggling noises? Hold on a second. I mean, it's good for sort of the effect
Dale
of
was
the whole
stealing
thing.
my coffee.
So the idea here is like this. In this infinite light which is shining, okay, the infinite light is not exactly have much to do, if you want to say, with these finite letters. There are two different powers. One is Hashem's power to be unlimited, that's light. And one is a different power of Hashem to be limited, and this is letters. It's just in the beginning of their first revelation, the light is prominent, the letters are nullified out of existence, and that's very important for us, because if they weren't, that would mean there would be division inside of Hashem. So letters are nullified out of existence at that level. Now, what we're saying though is they're there, however. So the fact that they're there means that there's some light which is actually interacting with them, so to speak. Like this is light everywhere. All this is just light. So some of the light is found in this area and in this area and in this area and this area.
Well, it's not actually an area yet.
It's not an area yet, but it's like sort of theoretically designated. And you know what it's designated as? 10 spheros of Kalim. Like in other words, like if we're going to say that the letters of the Luchos Mamish, let's tell them the Luchos. What is the Luchos? The Luchos is Kol Torah Kula. It's the Torah. What is the Torah? The Eitz Chaim. It's the 10 Spheros. Okay, it spreads out into 613 mitzvahs, and that spreads out into 300,000 letters and 600,000 letters. In other words, they subdivide, but you can break it down that the whole inyan of Gavul is 10. Right? The letters are 10. There's basically 10 letters. So the idea is that those 10 letters in Kiviyachol, they are filling this space, but not all of the light is actually brushing up and interacting with them. Some of the the stencil underwater I was saying, some of the light is outside of them. Some of the light has nothing to do with them. Some of the light is not, like the light isn't coming from them. The light is coming directly from Hashem because He is the power of Bli Gavul. There's another thing. Hashem is the power of Gavul. So they're residing in the same place, but only some aspect of the light actually interacts with those letters. The chitzonius aspect of the light interacts with the letters. The panemius aspect of the light, it doesn't have anything to do with the letters. It's beyond the domain of the letters. What's your question?
There are no letters.
Again, but we're talking about the theoretical letters. Why is that so hard to understand?
Because you're saying that you're currently giving an analogy of spaces, and some of it goes into the space of the theoretical letters, and some doesn't.
That's right. Because look, can I show you something? Here is an aleph. Okay?
Yes.
Now, all the air that's not in that space is over here, and all the air that is in this space is over here. You can talk theoretically. It's not like beyond us, right? So the point is that you see that all the air is the same, though. There's no difference, and this is the point of the mimer right now. There's no difference ultimately between this air and this air, as long as the letters don't pop up and show themselves. Right? If this letter that I just drew would sort of like surface, it would make a huge distinction between the air inside of it and the air outside of it. But so long as it doesn't surface, there's absolutely no difference. I can go like this all day long. You see what I'm saying there? You don't look 100% convinced.
No, okay, I hear what you're saying.
Okay, so the point is that...
But you're saying that since it's interacting with it, therefore it's Tony and Sa'ar, it's like that just sounds a little rough to me because these letters don't exist. There's no actual here space and their space and their space and their space because they don't ever exist. Not even like theoretically. The idea of them exists.
They do exist theoretically.
But not in space. The idea of them exists.
Okay, we're beyond space. Space has not been created yet. So yes, this is all...
So I don't know why that would need Tony and Sa'ar. It's like...
Because there's aspects of light which do not even encounter them, and in whatever theoretical space that they are holding, because they're holding theoretical space. They're holding space in Hashem's mind. Look, you have things in your mind,
I get you.
right? You put something in your mind over here. It's like it holds a certain space. I mean, it's not Gashmiistic space, but it's Ruchniistic space. We have to get comfortable with that. We're not comfortable with that. We're not going anywhere.
Wait, how?
Right? There's Ruchniistic space. We're talking about
part of
we're talking about Bechlal beyond space and time, beyond the Tzimtzum. So space is a theory right now. But the idea is that what will eventually become space, put it like that, it's sitting inside of no space. So we're talking about the theoretical space of the future. It has a little holding point before it happens. That's the space we're dealing with. That's all we've got. So in that, whatever interacts with that space, whatever interacts with these letters, it is by definition the chitzonius of the or. And whatever doesn't interact with those letters, doesn't even know from those letters, it's just infinite light, which never even thought of the concept of associating itself with some finite form. That's the panemius of the or.
So right now you are differentiating though.
There's a differentiation between chitzonius and panemius of the light. But you can't
differentiate.
and that's called light and darkness. But before the tzimtzum, they're not separated. So it's like one of these acts. You can't tell the difference between them. And the external part of the light has the exact same qualities as the internal part of the light for your reason. There's not space yet. So that's the point, is that there needs to be, it's just a theoretical differentiation. There is light and darkness, but there's no light and darkness because nothing's happened. All the darkness is swallowed up inside the light. Because nothing has separated them. The tzimtzum then comes, boom, it removes all the light. Both the external and the internal, and it just brings out letters. You have your Aleph, Beis, Gimel, that's all you have. Now they're still empty. The Aleph, Beis, Gimel that were behind the light, they did not suddenly become entities because they were never made out of anything. So all that happens is the light disappears and the empty letters now are by themselves. Guess what you see?
You can't see that.
What you see is tzimtzum, makom panoi, emptiness. That's right.
Letters.
You don't see letters. Because they are not made out of anything.
Right.
In order to get them to be made out of something, you have to inject a little bit of light and like fluff them up.
Okay.
So they are non-existent, and that's why we call it empty. That's the power of Gavul. We see what was behind this whole thing. Shlomo, I'll get to you in 1 second. We see what was behind this. These letters are not actually finite. They're just the ability for Hashem to not shine. They're gvul, limitation. So when they actually shine, you don't see anything. You see limitation, absence.
Are they the Kalim?
They're not kalim yet. They will be the kalim, because kalim has to. You can't have a theoretical cup and hold water in it, right? You can have a theoretical cup, but you can't have a theoretical cup and cold water in it. So the point is, until you inject them, the next stage, right? This is like empty. We'll just call this empty. I don't know. All drawings all look the same.
Where is
but
that?
The next stage.
Where is that? At Silas?
It's Silas. Where?
No, you said it's after the Tzimtzum.
No. This is the
So
tzimtzum. This
after
is the
the-
tzimtzum. I'm saying this after the tzimtzum.
What seems to?
You just have this empty space, and the letters are sort of theoretical. Here, I'll do it like this:
What is it?
theoretical aleph, theoretical base. Right? They're empty letters, and therefore this is just a space of emptiness. Okay, Shlomo, you have to do
So
something.
we define the letters not as being empty, but as being light. They are a form of light. So when you take the light, the
Wait a
infinite
second.
light out, you're still left
Wait.
with the light of the
Wait.
letter.
When did they become light?
They were
Right?
always light. Everything was light.
No. This is the beauty of it. Based on, we have this thing. It's like we need 3D. But like, you have on one side light and dark, which is all light. And then on the other side, you have this idea of Pashit, no light, emptiness, absence of gevul, limitation means no shine. Instead of going out and shining like light, it's a gevura, it holds back all the light. This is another power that Hashem has to not shine. It's a real thing. It eventually expresses itself as letters because letters have a shape and they indicate like form and holding something back. But before they actually show themselves as letters, it's just no. The answer is end. No, it's not light. So those letters, in their very essence, they're not letters of light. They're empty letters which light fills. When it's over here, the light is all flowing through them.
But then why call them letters even? They're just empty. There's nothing there. If it's empty, there's nothing there. Why are you calling them letters? Maybe you should say that then after the Tzimtzum, Hashem created the notion of letters within the emptiness.
Why? What's wrong with empty letters? In other words,
Because then it's not empty. If you want to call it mamash empty,
yeah.
then there should be empty, nothing there. Even letters, even theoretical letters.
But the thing is about letters is that form is the opposite of infinity. You see what I'm saying? Form is the opposite of infinity. We're calling them letters because they represent something as opposed to everything. That's the idea. So in other words, you're right. We're not really calling them letters because they don't have anything to them yet. They're just the power to make limitation. The power to make limitation. They didn't do it yet. But the truth is, as soon as that power shows itself, it actually does make some form of limitation. That's called theoretical letters. And the place is just filled with theoretical limitation in every possible form now. Because the letters now create every possible form of limitation. Anything that's going to go and interact with these letters, the infinite is not going to be infinite anymore. It's going to now take form. So it's like the Hashem's tool to reveal His power of form as opposed to no form. You see what I'm saying there? So they're empty letters. Let's go with me on this one. The next thing that happens though is that the light then comes back. Right? You have the return of the Kav through the Tzimtzum. And then coming out and creating the first world of Adam Kadmon, right here. Sorry, everything's upside down. Right, the light returns into the space of the empty letters, and it gives birth to letters that have light inside of them now. Before you had light that had letters inside of it. Before you had light with the letters inside. Now you have letters by themselves with no light, and now you have letters with light inside of them. They've captured the light and made the light have form. You understand?
Before even Adam.
That's where you begin with the union of worlds. A world is something where the letters contain the light.
It's the removal.
Okay, Yom Tov.
Adam Kadmon is like the first physical world.
Not physical. We're not. Physical is like
We
a
haven't even
million
gotten
light
there.
years from here.
But the top illustration is in Hashem's mind, basically.
It's in
we
Hashem.
haven't even got out of there yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And then eventually it goes to the spiritual world. But we're not even in the spiritual world yet. Like, what is Adam Kadmon?
That's true. Adam Kadmon would say is the first spiritual world.
And what is the middle circle?
This one is nothing. This is Hashem's power of showing Him being
Can
infinite.
you erase it? It's nothing, or it's actually nothing.
It's a contraction.
It's
part of the whole illustration?
It's the absence of light and the presence of Hashem's power to be limited. How does He show limitation? By pulling in His entire being and not letting it shine. That's called limiting, right? If you let it all out, that's the opposite of bringing it all in, right? So He basically showed His power of limitation by showing nothing as opposed to showing everything. So they have two opposite powers that they really one. Because those letters did exist inside of there, just not as an entity. So you have His limited and His unlimited powers are really one inside of His essence. The first thing He does is He shows His infinite side, and His finite side is all tucked away, unshown. Then He does the opposite. He shows His finite side, and His unlimited side is all tucked away and unshown. And then He brings them together. He makes a wedding of His limited power and His unlimited power. He puts light into vessel. So the vessel represents the finite. The light gives extension and life to the finite. And now you have spheros, i.e. a world.
It's a yichud.
It's
the
the-
yichud between
Yes.
the infinite and the finite.
That's exactly right.
Producing the sefirot.
It's using the first world of Adam Kadmon, the first 10 spheros that fill the space.
In this book that we've studied so far, we haven't got to Adam Kadmon yet. Basically, all that is still in God's mind at this point.
I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but at this moment, what we're talking about is here. The reason I drew all this out for your own.
Yeah.
You good here?
Standing right in front of it, but
Okay, but it doesn't. It's just like chicken scribble anyway. But the idea is like this. What we wanted to say, the whole point of all this, was this stage. We're talking about this stage right here. That here you have the theoretical darkness, which is the light which brushes up with these letters. And you have the light, which is the aspect of the Temimei light, which doesn't brush up with these letters, doesn't contact the letters. And what we're saying is, there's no distinction between them, because the letters don't actually come out and create any division. So the light in and the light out is actually all one light. There's a mixture of the light that's inside and the light that's outside, and therefore they need to be divided. That's what you need, a havdalah, Bein ha'or, bein ha'choshech, because right here we just proved that you have or and choshech, which is the light inside the letters and the light outside the letters, but it's undifferentiated. So Hashem says, I need to make a havdalah, and comes Eter to explain, v'yavdil bein ha'or, bein ha'choshech. Got it? Let's move on.
And what light goes into the letter?
The chitzonius of the light. The light of the
You said yesterday
Yisrael.
that all the light goes into the letters. And
What's
the
that?
light, you said all the light goes into the letters.
No, yesterday you mean?
Yeah, you said
No,
all the
I-
light gets condensed into it.
Yeah. So let me put that back for a second. So what I said yesterday, and Shlomo remember this? I was thinking about it kind of all day. What's happening is it makes more sense if you look at it with this model. All the light, it goes away. It comes out of the letters where it was sort of hovering, and it comes out of around the letters. It all goes back inside of Hashem's essence, and what's left is just the letters. So really, that's another way of looking at the fact that all the light sort of went into the letters. It went, because the letters are of Hashem's essence themselves. They're not really letters, right? They're absent theoretical power of limitation, and that remains when the light goes away. Which means that's the Rishima. So that means all the light actually went into that, because that's His essence.
Went
The
into the
Rishima is essentially Hashem's essence. It's higher than the light. Because when the light goes away, the Rishima never goes away. It stays there forever. It's not something you can play with and say, here it is, here it's not. Because
light
it's
didn't go
Him.
away into it. Light went away from it.
No, not away from it. Not away from it. The light is retracted inside of Hashem's essence.
Into the letters.
Basically, yeah, inside of Himself.
How's the letters His essence?
Because that's the crazy thing about Hashem. He actually is something.
Right. He is
Right.
He is
But
the
the
letter,
thing
but
is-
He's also the light.
Well, the light is
That's
ultimately the light is ultimately like a revelation of these letters, right?
Okay.
It's just that the letters themselves, when you're trying to reveal them in their primary state, there's no end to that revelation. When you bring them out, in other words, it's complicated. The letters can be at different states of reality, as we said, right? You have like letters of thought, letters of speech, letters of action. There's different stages of letters. So if you go all the way back to the origin of letters, there's no letters there, and therefore the revelation of them is also infinite. But when you start to sort of bring the letters into lower and lower states, the light that they reveal is also lower and lower levels of divine reality. Okay. So you don't see all the light, you see a finite aspect of the light. And that's the point. In other words, the ultimate source of the letter is just, there's no letters, it's empty. It's Hashem's power of Gavul. So all the light ultimately went inside of there, and therefore what appears is those letters.
I feel like you're skipping the step. Like you're seeing the lights going into it. Isn't that odd?
It's not going inside. It's going back outside. Like in other words,
where is it going?
It's not going. No, it's not good. The light is not going in. It's like it's not going inside these letters. It's pulling back. It's like it's going outside the board, right? It's coming away and it's leaving the letters in that place,
right?
Right?
So why are you saying that's going into the letters?
So because ultimately
that's the next step after. I mean, they first.
No, because
ultimately,
ultimately when those letters are there, left by themselves, right? What comes back through them is not just this level of light that was hovering in them, but you can ultimately go back and get all the light that was even not hovering in them. Because remember we said this: the Penimius is mixed with the Chitzonius here, right? The Penimius light is mixed with the Chitzonius light. So when you have this letter, you have the light which brushes up with it. The light which doesn't brush up with it is also brushing up with it in a certain sense because it's everywhere, right? You understand that
but
part?
once you reveal it, then it's not brushing up.
But do you remember that part though? It's like in this place you have the ocean water which is hanging around that stencil.
Yes.
And I sort of for convenience sake didn't say this part very clearly. But all the rest of the ocean
is also in there?
It's also in there. Why? Because the drop is not anything other than the whole ocean itself at that level. So the infinite light is also because the finite light is indistinguishable from the infinite light at that level.
But it's not.
Which means the infinite light is also in there. It's just in there in a makif way.
I think to solve it,
Yeah.
I think what clicked for me is when you said that the letters, the Rishima, is also an expression of God's infinite
essence.
And if that is the case, then it can contain the infinite light.
Exactly. The power of Gavul. Ultimately, what is the power of Gavul? The concept of the power of Gavul is that Hashem can be finite, which means He can take His whole self and put it into something. His whole self is infinite, and yet He can make it all that into one thing. It's mind-boggling, but it's Yiddishkeit. We say that it's in the Torah, it's in this mitzvah. You do this finite action, you can find God in a temple. It's like it doesn't make any sense. But this is the whole Yiddishkeit, is that just like Hashem is infinite, He's also beyond infinite. He's even finite if He wants to be, which means His whole self can be finite. So back to what I was saying here, and we'll end it, I hope. But the idea is that what's hovering in this, let's say it's like, a little bit, let's make it a little bit more, clear. This is an aleph, right? And there's water or light inside the aleph and also around the aleph. But the idea is that the light which is around the aleph, it's also inside the aleph because it's the whole place. So it's just like the letter touches like that's why we call it external and internal. The internal, it's not like it's not in the place of the external. It's also there. It's called makif. You understand what makif means? It means that
surrounding it.
It's but if you read Tanya, the definition of surrounding does not mean that it's outside of it.
Right.
It means that it's unperceivable to it. It's imperceivable to it, which means in the consciousness of the letter, it just doesn't have any. All the letter can be conscious of is the light which goes into its gevul. The light which is beyond its ability, it's flowing through it. It's just not graspable by the letter. That's the union of makif. So that's why there's no distinction between the inner and the outer light, because the inner light is everywhere. The outer aspect of the light is just that light which brushes up with and can have some shaykhs to the vessels, but it doesn't push the inner light away. Yeah. Therefore, when all the light goes away and you want to pull it back through the letters, the outer light is available, and so is the inner light is also available to you. Because it was also inside of those letters in some makif way to begin with.
And all of that goes inside.
You follow that?
Yeah, I got it.
Because that was the whole conversation yesterday.
All of that goes inside the letters. No.
Ultimately, in the Geula, we'll be able to pull all that out. Like
But
at this stage, when we say inside the letters, we said it's like behind. It goes like away from the letters.
Where does
When
it
we
go?
created Adam Kodmon.
Down here.
Yeah.
No. At the level of Adam Kadmon, the only light that comes into Adam Kadmon is the external part of the letters.
So that's what
It contains inside of it. No, put it like this: in the letters of Adam Kadmon, that's the whole point of the separation. The reason that this stage happened was so that we could remove the chitzonius from the panemius, so that the actual letters which are shaykh to light could the light which is shaykh to letters, could go into those letters and be removed from the infinite, so that they could actually be contained inside of letters. The whole purpose of this thing was to get rid of all this surrounding light and just capture the light which is relevant to letters. So what comes back through in this kav is not all the light immediately. It does eventually, is accessible, it can come through. But it's called the panemius of the kav. But the regular old kav is specifically the chitzonius of the light, removed from the panemius, which now can comfortably go inside of these new letters that have just been hatched, because this light is finite, and it's not mixed anymore with the infinite, so it can actually go inside of letters. Now, the panemius, it has some shaykhs to the infinite light that it was once a part of. But that won't actually come and reveal until we work with our finite aspect of the external light, until Mashiach comes, and then we'll reveal that inside of the light was actually the infinite light.
But Adam,
you follow all that?
Yeah, but
you're wrong.
But at Adam Kadmon,
yeah,
at this stage, it's only the panemius light that goes into the letters. The kav is just the panemius light.
The chitzonius light, dafka. The chitzonius light is the light which is shaykh to the letters.
Chatzonius. I thought the panemius is the light that is shaykh.
Oh, when you say panemius, you mean no. Okay, but because panemius can mean two things. Panemius can mean inside.
Yeah.
But we're calling that chitzonius because that aspect of the light which is relevant to going inside of something means this limited light. That's called the external part of the light. And the panemius of the light is the infinite light which doesn't fit inside.
So what's the internal light called?
Or Ein Sof, before the Ratzon of Hashem, before the Spheros. Just you got confused only with the terminology. Panemius can mean two things. It can mean very, very high and like inner, or it can mean that it's able to fit inside of something, which is outer.
Okay, so let me just forget the difference. The light that goes in through the kav, through the letters at Admon Kodmon, is the light that was initially inside the letter.
Very good, yes. And that's called chitzonius light, by the way.
But through that light, you can access the panemius somehow.
Yes, because why? Because originally they were one. Exactly.
Right, where does the...
So that's how the infinite goes into...
Yes. Basically, this is the mechanism of that.
Go?
Nice. I'm feeling like we're finally... yesterday's class was mamash a doozy. I feel like everyone walked out of here bilbul completely. Go ahead, Tzemach. I'm putting this away.
Where does the light goes?
You should never put it away.
You said it? Moves the light inside of him?
Say it again. He moves the light?
He removes the light.
Into him.
Where does it go?
It just goes into a state of like a vacuum inside of himself.
You can't see it anymore?
It's not seeable. You know, it's like if you could take this light that's shining out of the light bulb and just pull it back in. Yeah, when it's going the other direction, you can't see it.
Which is where?
It's deep into his essence. Just not shining.
It can't shine from there?
Yeah, we don't. It could if he decided to turn it around and shine it, but his will is to pull it back.
Off the light.
He's pulling back the light in by his will.
Only one little.
Then he brings back, when he decides to shine it again, only one little external aspect of it.
This infinite world before Adam Kadmon, as far as I can understand, it's like almost Hashem's imagination. When he activates it, when it gets to the beginning of Adam Kadmon, is it identical, but in a more physical, spiritual way? Like, is it actually like, because I know like technically like this chair is in the spiritual world, this chair. But before that, it's just Hashem's creative thought. Where
no, what we're saying is that all the way up, it's this chair. It's just when you get to a certain point of limitlessness, the chair is there only in theory, but it's still there, and that's the whole idea of a separation. Let's remove all the blinding light so we can actually see the chair. The chair has been there the whole time. It's just that we have to remove
Hashem because Hashem's infinite. So it's an infinite chair.
I'll tell you one better. Even when we're sitting here, and we think there's for sure a chair. As far as Hashem is concerned, the infinite light is still shining and everything is totally nullified out of existence. That's how he sees things throughout. It's just that he helps us to experience ourselves by, from our side of the story, removing the infinite experience so we can start to perceive stage after stage after stage the idea of things.
Like in the Matrix.
I want to do one more line inside
There is no spoon.
because we didn't do any lines inside yet. Okay, so just to get us rolling into tomorrow's class, it says page Samech Vav. V'yedua hamashal b'zeh. Right? We're trying to understand how he separates the light and how there are two lights in there which are really one. So he says the mashal for this is mashpas harav l'talmid, from the Rav giving over to his student. When the Rav thinks about the idea to himself, when the Rebbe is going to sit there and start like meditating on a Tosafos, let me tell you something. What he's thinking about has absolutely nothing to do with anything that our thoughts can grasp. He's in some place where it's like it's not in our realm of possibility. So when the Rav is thinking to himself, it's not be'erich, it's not in the same breed of knowledge as the student. Even though he has inside of himself something which is theoretically is relevant to the student, because why? We learn plenty from the Rebbe. He can clearly has things inside of him which are relevant to us. But when he's thinking to himself, those things are negated. He's not narrowing in on them. They're in there because they come out eventually. What is these thoughts that the Rebbe has which are relevant to us while he's busy thinking to himself? It's the external aspect of his mind. And it's basically negated entirely when he's not separating it from the rest of himself and like teaching us. But even when that seichel is sitting inside of his mind, when he's busy thinking to himself, even the part which is relevant to us at that moment, it's flooded with his light. In other words, there's something which is relevant to us and it's sitting in there, but while he's busy thinking to himself, even that part is totally overrun with his giant intellect. So what do you see here? That even the external part of his intellect, when it's still inside of him, it's still in no way relevant to us. And that's what we said on the board, that the infinite light is residing in the same place as the finite light, therefore making the finite light totally irrelevant to being seen or known. And in one line, what does it mean? You can't recognize the external part from the penimius part. It's in there, but since the Rebbe is not busy separating it, it's basically unrecognizable. When he finally, once he decides, oh, by the way, I have a student, I want to teach him something, if he's going to just come out straight and tell you what he's thinking, he would automatically give you his penimius haseichel too much. He would give you the way he understands it, because as they are inside of him, there's no separation between them. So he would just come out and show you it. You wouldn't understand it. It would be like shining the Or Ein Sof into a world. It wouldn't help make a world. So what does the Rav have to do? He has to basically put his mind away. He has to stop thinking about what he's thinking about entirely. Right? And there's one mimer in Torah Or which always reminds me of this. It's like I forget which it's in. I forget which. I think it's in Parshas Chai Sarah. But it's just like, it doesn't have a title, it just says Osios Harav. And basically it's this mimer of just like Roshei Tevos and Meir Makomos, and like once in a while he'll throw in like a quote from the Zohar, but it's like, you can't read it at all. It's basically how the Rebbe's thinking Chassidus to himself. There's no like flow, it's not like a story, it's not a beginning, it's not an end, it's like just notes, you know? And this is what makes me think about it. It's like if the Rebbe would just tell you actually how he's thinking about it, by the time it would come out to you, you have absolutely no idea what it's talking about. In order for him to make it relevant to you, he has to stop thinking about it the way he thinks about it. He has to remove all the light. And then, Nivdal Etzel Hamashpia Bechinis Chitzonius Hashayach El Makabel. Then what does he do? Then he brings back into his empty mind an aspect of light which is only relevant to you. He's removed his way of thinking and he's only brought into focus the way of thinking which is relevant for you. It now becomes recognizable on its own as a distinct entity, his chitzonis of seichel. And he's removed from it all the fancy light of the Rebbe which was previously clouding it. That it doesn't shine in it so much. He can't get rid of his intellect entirely, but it doesn't shine in it so much. And this is all clear from what we said in the higher realms. The Kodemat Tzimtzum Haya B'chinas Chitzonis Ha'or Gam Kem Gilui Or Rav B'chinas Bli Gvul Mamish. That before he made the Tzimtzum, there was the external aspect of Hashem's mind, there was the 10 spheres of light, but it was overrun with the infinite light. The Fishis Klalus Ha'or Hu B'chinas Gilui Etzem Me'ena Etzem De'en Sof Atzum Yisborot. Because in general, all light, even the finite light, when it's directly coming out of Hashem, it's all me'ein ha'etzem, it's all infinite. Even the theoretic, like in the Rebbe, even his thoughts, which are relevant to us, they're also infinite at that level when they're in the Rebbe, unless he segregates them. Because before the Tzimtzum, all the light was at one level of basically coming directly out of him, close to him, revealing his essence. So even though inside of his essence he also had the ability to have these 10 lights, but it was not delineated. And therefore, even the external light was totally infinite. And in our mashal, even the idea the Rebbe is going to teach us, before he separates it from how he understands things, it's fully infinite. You couldn't understand it even though it's for you. And by the way, you can't even find it in there. Inside the Rebbe's mind, it's not available yet. It's there. And the way it's there is that it's residing on this exceedingly high level where it's infinite, and you can't find it. Everything was one, those two levels of light, and through the Tzimtzum, he made the Havdalah between them. He took away the infinite, and he brought into focus the finite, and that's the light that goes down and invests into the letters of the Rishimo and creates the world of Ak. Only that external part of the light. Okay, clear.
Go ahead. Why do you call it the external part of the light? Why is that called the external?
Because just like the Rebbe, the aspect that he has
to him, it goes out from him.
Right.